Hello everyone, I'm Sarah Swinton, and today in this video we are going to be going over multiple alleles and sex-linked inheritance as part of our non-Mendelian genetics. Again, non-Mendelian genetics is a type of genetics where the traits are not completely dominant over the other. We have a weird variation that we're going to be going over. So the first one we're going to be looking at are your multiple alleles. So multiple alleles, this is when your genes have more than one possible allele in order to give you your trait. Now, a good example of multiple alleles are your blood types. So we have your ABO blood types. You have blood type A, blood type B, blood type O, and you have blood type AB. Now, if you can kind of look at AB, that is actually a combination of A and B. So this is actually a co-dominant trait in with everything else. So multiple alleles, this is a type of complex inheritance. So for blood type A, your red blood cells have a certain protein on it that codes for blood type A. For blood type B, those blood cells have a protein on it like this that codes for protein B. Blood type AB ends up having the proteins A and B on the red blood cell. And then blood type O, that red blood cell doesn't have any of those proteins at all. So that's why it is blood type O, and this is completely recessive. So in order to look at blood type A can be written in multiple different ways. It can be written as I big A, or it can be represented as AA, and this is basically a pure blood type A or homozygous A. It could also be written as IA little I, which is also AO. If they're AO, this means they are heterozygous for blood type A. That means they carry blood type O that can be passed on to their offspring, but they don't have it themselves. Blood type B can be represented by IB, which is also BB. Blood type BB, they are homozygous B, and that is all they have. It can also be represented by IB little I, or BO. BO type blood, again, these are heterozygous B. That means they carry blood type O. They don't actually have it, but they can pass it to their offspring. Then you have IAIB. This is also just blood type AB. And then for blood type O, that is usually represented by little I, or also just OO, and that is going to be recessive. All right, so here we have a problem where mom has blood type O and dad is heterozygous B blood type. We're going to try to figure out the blood types that their child could possibly have. So mom is type O, so she is OO, and dad is heterozygous B, which means he is BO. Now, again, there's multiple ways you can do this. You can do this with the I's or just with the O's or the B's. This is much easier. If you use the I's, you have to keep carrying it over. So I recommend just using the superscript on the I's because that helps a lot. All right, so mom is OO, dad is BO. Now we're just going to go ahead and fill in the Punnett Square. So we have BO, BO, OO, and OO. So that means their children can either have type B or type O. So they're heterozygous B or they're blood type O. All right, so dad is heterozygous A and mom is heterozygous B. We're going to figure out the probability that their child could have type O blood. So if dad is heterozygous A, so hetero different, that means we're looking at AO. And mom is heterozygous B, again, hetero is different, so she would be BO. We're going to find the probability that their child could have blood type O. So dad AO, mom BO, fill in your Punnett Square. We have AB, BO, AO, and OO. So probability that their child can have blood type O, they're only 1 out of the 4, so that should be about 25%. All right, so here's another question. We have the children have type A and type B blood. Mom is type O. We need to figure out what dad's blood type is just from this. So we know mom is type O, so that means she is OO. And the children have type A and type B. So mom's OO, dad is question mark, question mark. We're just going to go ahead and fill in mom and go from there. We know, however, the children have type A and type B, which means there's A here and there's B here. So that means dad has to be AB. That's the only way you can get children with type A or type B blood. Okay, so this is going to bring us to sex-linked traits. Sex-linked traits are typically found on the X chromosome, because then whenever we're talking about sex traits, we are talking about your X and your Y. Now, only your male inherited characteristics or male characteristics are found on the Y chromosome. So whenever we talk about sex-linked traits, we talk about the X chromosome and X chromosome only. So this includes your X-linked recessive traits, which is what we usually talk about here in biology. And this is things like your male pattern baldness, hemophilia, and color blindness. And we're going to talk about each of these. So if we look at male pattern baldness, this is basically trying to see whether or not a individual is going to have hair when they're older. Now, females can be bald when they get older, but usually this is linked more to your males, and that's because males cannot be carriers. They either have the trait or they don't have the trait, since they only have one X chromosome, because they are XY. So if we look at our first one, we have XX. XX is female, and big A, since this is not recessive, this is a normal female. Our next one, we have XX, female. Big A, little a, well, still normal since it's not recessive, but is a carrier, and because they carry the recessive trait to be passed on. Okay, so if we have X little a, XX is female, little a, that is recessive. So that means they have the recessive trait, like male pattern baldness. All right, so for the next one, we have XY. XY is male. Has one big A on the X, so that means he's normal. He does not have a recessive trait. Here we again have XY, that's male. Has a little a, which means he does have the recessive trait, so he is with the recessive trait like male pattern baldness. So in order for a woman to have the baldness gene, they have to have two little a's. So that means they have to get it from mom and from dad. For a guy to have the male pattern baldness, they only need it from one individual, so it's much easier for them to get it. All right, so we are going to be crossing a woman who is a carrier for the male pattern baldness with a man that is not bald at all. So a woman who is a carrier, well, first off, we know she's a woman, so she is XX, and she's a carrier, which means she is a big and a little. It does not matter the letters you put on your X's, but your X's and Y's do matter. And then we have a man that is not bald at all. So a man is XY, so I'm going to do that. And he is not bald, which means he is a big A on his X. So again, these traits, sex-linked, replace that with X-linked. So it's only found on the X chromosome. All right, so mom is X big A, X little a. Dad is X big A, Y. We're going to fill in our chart. So we're going to take this, we're going to drag it down, take this one, drag it over, and we're going to fill in our Punnett Square. So first box is X big A, X big A. Second box is X big A, X little a. Third box is X big A, Y, and X little a, Y. So if we look at the amount of sons that are bald, well, one of them is bald. So we have this one here. He's bald. He is not. And out of sons, there's only 2 sons here, because we've got 2 daughters, 2 sons. So percent sons being bald, that's 1 out of 2. And 1 out of 2 is 50%. If we look at daughters being bald, so daughters, that's these 2. If we look at how many of them are bald, that's actually none. So 0 out of 2, it's 0%. So sometimes we look at sex-linked traits that aren't just a fully recessive trait. Sometimes we'll have something like this with calico cats. Some really cool things about calico cats is they actually get their coat coloring from their X chromosome. So a calico cat has to have the orange on the X chromosome and the black on the X chromosome. So you have to have 2 X's to be a calico cat. So here we've got XOXO, well, XX, that is female, and OO is showing orange coat color. For our next one, we have XBXB, well, XX, this is female, and BB is representing black fur. So here we've got XBXO, XX again is female, And BO, that is supposed to be black and orange, so that's going to be a calico cat. Here we've got XBY. So with XBY, XY is male. B is black. Our next one we have XOY. Again, it's XY, so that's male. And there's an O, so he's orange. So males usually are not calico cats because in order to be a calico, you have to have two X's. So only way a male calico cat or a male cat can be calico is he has to be XXY, which is Klinefelter syndrome. All right, so we need to cross a calico cat with an orange male cat. So a calico cat, we've got our XX for female. Calico, she has black fur and orange fur. And our orange male cat, he is XY because he is male and he's orange, so he has the O on his X. And we leave that Y alone. All right, so now we're going to fill in our Punnett Square. So for our first one, we have XBXO, XOXO, XBY, and XOY. So if we look at that, out of all the children, how many of them here are calico? Well, he's orange, he's black, she's orange, she's calico. So it's 1 out of 4, which is 25%. All right, another question we have here. We have hemophilia is X-linked recessive. So hemophilia is the inability to clot your blood. So it's X-linked recessive. Mom is a carrier for hemophilia, and dad actually has it. So mom's a carrier. Well, mom is female, so XX. She's a carrier, which means she has a big letter and a small letter. And again, this is X-linked recessive, this trait. Dad has this recessive trait. Well, dad, he is XY since he's male. And since he has the recessive trait, he has a little a on his X. So again, guys are pretty easy. They either have the trait or they don't. You don't usually have to worry about that second X. All right, we fill in our Punnett Square. In the first box, we have X big A, X little a, and then we have X little a, X little a, X big A, Y, and X little a, Y. So if we look at this again, we're going to figure out how many of the sons have hemophilia. Again, sons, there's only 2 sons. We have 2 of them that are XY, so I'm going to go ahead and square that off. And we're going to see how many of them have hemophilia. Well, 1 of them does. So 1 out of 2 should give me 50%. Then the next one is how many of the daughters have hemophilia. So daughters are XX because they're female. So how many of them have hemophilia? Well, there's actually 1. So she has hemophilia, so that's 50%. Now, if it asks for total children of hemophilia, we'll get rid of all of this. That's all 4. So how many of them have the recessive trait? Well, that would be her and him. So it'd be 2 out of 4, so it's still 50%.